Alrighty. So we are going to, as I said, review on Wednesday. My sixth period, they want to have a early morning review again. So if you're available, come on in. If you're not, that's your choice. I don't care. Yeah.
Could you do a Google Meet?
I will try to remember.
So, when is the test Wednesday too?
Test is Wednesday. Yeah. Which is way better than doing it after spring break.
Yeah.
So you're let me think. You're welcome.
So we'll have a lab.
We will have a lab the day we come back, and I will try to remember to send out an announcement for those of you that actually pay attention to those announcements that I send out.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So let's go. I'll set this for like 6:50. Actually, 6:50 a.m. And I'm going to have this on Wednesday morning. And the label is going to be Open Up Google Meet. Just for you, Evans.
Thank you.
Alrighty. So, here we go. It is 3:29 today. Earlier today, I wrote down 9:29. And one of my students looked at me and goes, "Yeah, I would not want to go back." And I'm like, "What are you saying, Miss? I get an F today." Yeah. No, she just said she wouldn't want to have to live through another year of me, and I'm going to be honest, I was a little hurt by that.
I just wouldn't want to live through another year.
You could say what? Let's hear it.
I don't want
Let's
to go
hear
for another
it.
year.
What were you going to say?
Me?
Yeah.
I just don't like September.
Oh, okay. I got married in September.
Oh, so you really just offended me.
Dang,
That's
you really are going to get an F, aren't you?
That's all right. That's all right. So, here we go.
I love September.
This is the front of my 3x5. I actually have a front and a back this time. So you might want to, you don't need to write that stuff down because it's online. I would just go and maybe freeze pause the video or whatever and look at that. So I've got that. And then here is the back. Pretty self-explanatory. All right, so this is what I've got. So I'm going to give you a skeleton. I want you to make it complete, okay? So this is the skeleton, and I want you to turn that into a complete with all H's and lone pairs. So I want that as a complete structure with all H's and lone pairs, and I need 8 hands. Okay? Stuff we've talked about multiple times already.
I was meeting with the cancellation.
You want me to believe that?
I have a little slip.
Oh, okay. Okay. One. Two, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Uno más. 8. Alrighty, who was 4?
That's me.
What do you got for me, Wiser?
So I got a C with 3 H's around it,
Okay.
connected to a C with H above it, a C below it, with 3 H's on that C.
Okay.
And then that's connected to a C with a C above it.
Like how you're trying to utilize your room. That's good. So you don't run all those H's together, right? That's a good idea. With an H like that, right?
Yep.
Okay.
That's onto another C with an H above and below it.
Okay.
With another C with an H above and below it. And double bond to an O, bond to an H with 2 lone pairs.
Like that?
Yep.
No.
No?
Pretty close.
Pretty close.
Yeah.
Wow.
There should have been H.
Okay, wouldn't have this H, right? Why would this H not be there? Yeah, because it's already got that double bond, and we know it only likes to make
That,
2 bonds.
2 bonds.
the last carbon would only
And
have
then
one
the
H,
last carbon
right?
will only have 1 H.
And then the last carbon would only have 1 H because as it stands,
It's already made 4 bonds.
it's already made 4 bonds. Let's say I did, and I don't know what H you guys are talking about. I only see 1 H, right? Why is it you only see 1 H? It's okay when it comes in handy for you guys. Now, that is what they're going to ask you to do. Now, here is 12 questions on the test. Are going to be covered in this one and the next 2 questions. Okay? Shape and bond angle. What is the shape and bond angle around that carbon? I'm just going to give you all a second. Get something down. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Time. Trevin, you put your pencil down. What do you got for me?
Is it tetrahedral?
Is it tetrahedral around that carbon?
No.
No.
Now, Bueller put his head down. I'm assuming because he felt bad for you. So what do you got, Bueller?
Trigonal.
Trigonal pyramidal? Is he right?
No.
What is it then? Trigonal planar. Why is it trigonal planar then, All's house?
Because if the arrangement was tetrahedral and it was like based off of lone pairs, then it would be trigonal pyramidal. But since it only has 3 around it, originally it's a trigonal planar.
That's a pretty good, right? The lone pair makes it pyramidal, right? Now, so then what is the bond angle then? 120. 109.5 is reserved for what? 3.
Pyramidal.
Pyramidal, bent, tetrahedral.
So
Okay.
what is the 180? Is that one linear?
180 is linear, and in 180 you're going to have probably at least, well, in fact, always. What will you have in a linear bond? Either double bonds or a triple bond. Okay? Now, then they can ask you this. Is there a bond polarity here?
Yes.
Yes. What are they, Evans?
The oxygen bond is slightly negative, and the carbon is slightly positive.
Slightly positive, right? Now, there could be one other type of question they could ask here. And we know what it is. Say that louder. Is there a molecular polarity? Is the whole molecule polar here? And what would you say, Weiser? I would probably say yes. Why?
So it has the lone pair.
Because these lone pairs kind of give this end of this molecule a negative end. By default, that would make this end then probably slightly positive, and I would say it would be slightly polar, which means it would have a short arrow in that direction. See how we do a little spiral review there? Now, here's something I noticed. That if you start here, and you can answer those questions, that is 30 seconds of the test. Which, if you do the math, is about 1/3 of the test we answered in the last 9 minutes.
You wrote one.
Man, I think it sucks.
See, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. Why'd you get today for today? Yeah, you know how it is. Yeah. It's okay when it's you guys, but when it's me, it's like, oh, I don't know what you're talking about. What'd you say, Trevor?
Said I wrote down tetrahedral.
Oh, I didn't see that.
You're right, Trevor.
Yeah. Oh, that's what it was. Yeah. And that's what you're gonna have. Now, it's actually, I'm kind of glad you wrote that. So let's say I looked at this. Let's say I wrote down trigonal pyramidal. And I forgot my RNA. Pyramidal. Trigonal And I don't know. I think it's pyramidal like this. Pyramidal. Does anyone in here, besides Evans and Weiser, I just knocked you two out because I thought you would know the answer, know what situation in this chapter gave us this every time? Taylor, do you know what it is? There was one that gave us trigonal pyramidal every time. Higley.
Is it like when it has a NH2?
Exactly. If they give me an NH2, no matter what it is, when they had that NH2 on there, because that NH2 gives you what? One lone pair. So if I got this, right, and then I've got this NH2 out here, when I draw that, it's going to look like that, right? And I would have, carbon, carbon, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right?
You scoot it up a little.
Sorry. It would look like that, right? And that is going to give me trigonal pyramidal every time. As long as they're talking about what's around this N. It's going to be trigonal pyramidal, and it will always be about what? 109.5. So, I think, Trevin, that's kind of a giveaway. You see an N, and that's the angle they're talking about. It's going to be trigonal pyramidal. Yes, Price.
This is kind of unrelated. It might be a dumb question, but with like the carbons or whatever, how do you know when it would be hydrogens around it, or like how would you know if it could be double bond?
Ooh. So, they will always illustrate the double bond. If they don't illustrate it, it's H's.
Okay.
And that actually wasn't a dumb question at all. Dumb questions are like, can we go have class outside today? Is this important? Hey, Mr. Denton, should I write that down? Things like that. They're dumb. Yes, Weiser.
Is there a way to illustrate a double bond in like when you're just writing it out in condensed?
Ooh, now that's a great question. And what you will see condensed is they will actually cheat and put it in there. Let me see. I have not. It's funny you say that because I don't know that I've seen them do that. And I when I went through the homework, I don't remember seeing one of them at all. But what they would do is they would actually draw it right in the condensed structure. And I'll be dang, they don't do that at all. So I would say right now not to worry about it. But that is a good question.
Okay.
Yeah, but you'll see it down the road. They'll have, CH2, CH2, CH, CH, double bond, CH, and then they'll put it right in the condensed. Because if not, you probably wouldn't know to put it there. So good job. Okay? All right, so that is that. Right here. All righty. Now, has anyone done what I asked them to do?
I don't know.
Functional groups. Anybody done this yet? Raise your hand if you haven't. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4 is all. My 5th period had 9, I think. Yeah. Yeah, you guys, let me think. What's the word? Suck. Yeah.
We still only get 1 3x5 on the test, though.
Yeah, you still only get 1 3x5. The reason I wanted you to do them, it's like, is anybody, what's the class, like kids will come with a stack of 3x5s this big and they're always memorizing shit. Midterm, that's a class, right? I mean, how many things do they have to memorize? A lot. So my thought was that if I got you to write it down early, yeah, it's amazing how I think stuff like that up, Trevin. Yeah, you should have wrote it down. Yeah, yeah. Which is probably why if you go back in time, I believe I know a guy that said, hey, go write these down. It's amazing how things happen like that.
I'm man enough to admit that's not there.
What can I say? Not my first rodeo. Now, let's say I did this. Okay, so who has them written down? Okay, so you and you and you guys are all out. Were you raising your hand earlier?
No, I forgot, but I have them. I did it.
So
And you're not a blonde?
I was raising my hand earlier to ask you.
Oh.
Dirty blonde, I know.
What?
You see his sisters, he was blonde.
Whatever.
I
All right.
think I'm a blonde.
Okay, so if you have them written down, you're out. Now, understand this. Is that they are literally going to write this down and they're going to ask you, what is that? Okay? Now, something you do need to understand is that they look at functional groups two ways. So anything that's got this C double bonded to the O is a carbonyl. Okay, it's a carbonyl. Not a big deal. The carbonyl simply means I've got that C double bonded to an O somewhere in my compound. What you're after is what is that? Yeah, it's a carbonyl group, but what is that specific kind of group? Does anybody know? Do you have them written down?
No.
No, what is it?
Carboxylic acid.
Yeah, this is a carboxylic acid. This is a carboxylic acid. And literally, there are 5 of these on the test. So just in that first 9 minutes and that picture, we're over half the test. And I can assure you that when you get to those 5, you're going to think to yourself, you know, self, I really should have done what Mr. Denton suggested I do 2 weeks ago. Just say it. Yeah.
What if I do know them that
Well, if you know them, then I don't care. That's fine. If you've already got them down, that's freaking awesome. Okay, but what's your percentage in this class, Weiser? Yeah, am I worried about you? That would be a no. Now, there's really no other way than to just know them. And if you can find a way to squeeze at least the last 9, the heteroatoms, do you know what I mean when I say the heteroatoms?
Yeah.
The heteroatoms when they just added the hydroxy group or they added the oxy, you know what I mean? And then the carbonyl group, just those 2 tables, they're probably the most important. If you can just figure that out. Does that make sense? Yes.
So I have a question with I have it in my notes a couple days ago where if the double bonded O is in the middle, that's an ketone.
Yeah.
Oh,
So it would look just like this. That's a great question. So if I did something like this, right, and I did that, this is now a ketone.
and then if it's on the end, it's an aldehyde.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep. And this one was actually a what, if you remember? The carboxylic acid was basically an aldehyde and an alcohol together. That's how I taught that.
So
If I did that, that's an aldehyde. If I did that, that's an alcohol. If I do that, it's a carboxylic acid.
okay, that makes sense.
Does that? Can we visualize that? And that's kind of what's going on there. England.
This is a little bit unrelated, but are we gonna have to do skeletal into compounds or not? Into the condensed,
Skeletal into condensed.
or is it just into the base?
We did one in class. Anybody remember that? There's probably a really good reason we did one of those in class.
It's not important.
Because it's not important, as all house points out. Okay? Now, what did we say? We said this was a ketone, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so from there, where are we at? Oh, good question here. What else can I say about this molecule? Does anybody remember what I would say about this? Nice. See why I'm not worried about you, Weiser? It's soluble. Do you remember why it's soluble, though, Weiser? That alcohol, remember that alcohol will allow it to do what?
Hydrogen bomb.
Hydrogen bond with water. See, I have taught you guys some stuff. I'm actually feeling kind of proud of myself right now. Yeah, that's right. I'm doing what I'm doing. Okay? Now, so I have this written down. So if I'm an alcohol, and I know I'm an alcohol because I've got that OH on me, right? That accounts for 3 things typically. We just said one is that it's soluble. Does anybody remember the other 2 things? Flammable And I guess the last one is often, not always. I heard it. Yeah, and I would say it's also going to be a little slightly polar. And it's because of that, because of its what? The lone pairs. Yes.
So with the amine,
Yeah.
you add an NH2 to
Yes.
onto that. So what happens to the nitrogen?
What do you mean?
Because when it bonds, does that the H2O bond with water, or does that just?
So you're gonna look. They will look at them independently. So the same thing happens. That's actually a good question. If I look at an amine now, okay, an amine simply means I've got that NH2 on me, right? Which one of these does not apply to that? Does anybody know? It's the flammable one that doesn't. It is going to be soluble because of the hydrogen bonding, because F over N, right? And it's also going to be slightly polar, not as much, because I've only got what? One lone pair instead of two lone pairs, right? But it's probably not on the flammable range anymore. Okay? But yeah, it's still there, and it still does some of the same things because it's a similar compound. Okay? Alrighty, now, Stratford actually had this cold. I'm going to write this. Now, if they ask me a question that looks similar to this, okay? Which of the following, and remember, these are all multiple choice, so they word them differently, right? But if I wrote which of the following would be or would have the highest boiling point. And it doesn't matter if they ask boiling point or melting point or whatever. Who can remember what I said to look for?
Long chain.
What?
Long chain.
Okay, long chain?
Non-metals.
I heard it. Say it louder. Yeah, look for a metal. Look for a metal. Because the metal probably makes it what? Ionic. What else did that make it? I heard it. Inorganic. Nice job. Inorganic. Okay. So just kind of look for that. And this topic right there is 2 or 3 questions by itself. So we're up to like 21 or 22 now. Okay. Alrighty. So now we're going to go with 12 hands. 12 hands. I'm going to give you condensed. I want both skeletal and complete. But what I've learned is every kid that I noticed, anyway, in my last class, went complete and then skeletal. Not from skeletal to complete. So this is what we got. And this is challenging, okay? So I'm going to go CH3 taken twice. CHO. CH2 taken 4 times. CH3. Okay? So I want both skeletal and complete, and I don't care how you do it. One, two, three, four, 5. I say 12. 6, 7, 8, 9, 3 more, 10, 2 more, 'Am I going to get 2 more? Okay, everybody look up here. Okay. Now, in my last class I had 2 kids do this and they both got it wrong. Okay? Now, let me word it this way. Can anybody tell me what makes something like this hard to draw or harder to draw complete? Yes.
Well, the CH3.
This one?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That makes it harder?
because there's 2 of them.
There is. Okay, but to me, I can figure that out. Why is it? What do you think? What do you think would make this challenging to most students? No? Yo, Evans.
It's the O,
Why is it the O?
because they don't know where it's at.
Yeah, because remember, O can be where? Can it be in my main chain? It can. Or it could be a branch, right? Now, if it was a halogen, like fluorine or chlorine or bromine or whatever, I know it's a branch. But O poses a problem. Now, this is what I would do. I would start with this carbon. See, I've got it. Bond to that carbon. Well, first off, how many bonds does carbon want to make? 4. Well, let's look at it. How many things are directly around that carbon? I've got these 2, right? And then I've got an H and an O, right? Well, if I'm drawing it like that, the only way for that to work, because O likes to make how many bonds? 2 would be to make that O part of my main chain. So I've got that. Then I'm going to have CH2 taken 4 times. Right? And then I'm going to finish it off with a, like that, right? All of those. And then these are all H's. And you'll learn starting next chapter, we stop drawing the H's. We just draw lines, and we all know that at the end of that line must be a what? Must be an H. Now, what else would I need here? Yeah, just lone pairs right there. Right? So now, let's look at it. This carbon is that carbon, right? Those 2 are those 2. That one is that one, right? That H. Then I've got my O, 2 bonds, which is what it wants. Then I got my 4 CH2s, 1, 2, 3, 4, my CH3 at the end. Now, what if I did this? Shape and bond angle around that O. So I've already got a bent. And about 109.5, is she right? Typically the case right there. Okay? Alrighty, so now that is that. So now, somebody brave enough to go skeletal? What do you got, Evans?
So you start out with a line for your first carbon. Yeah. And then you want a line going like this, and then a line going up as well.
So I want to do that, like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Then you have an O at the end of that line.
An O at the end of that line.
Okay. And then you have a chain of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines.
6 lines?
I think so, yeah.
Well, I guess if you count the lines, because I'd have 1 line, 2 lines, 3 lines, 4. I think I only got 5 lines, don't I? Carbon, 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 carbon. Because the end line counts as the point, right? So, yeah. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That and counts. Does that make sense? And then because it's skeletal, they usually don't put what in? Don't put lone pairs in. And that's like another 7 questions on the test. And then Fight Club goes out later. Okay? Alrighty, now, what if I asked you this? If I said polar molecules typically equal what? Anybody remember the answer to that? It's been a while ago when I originally taught this. What do polar molecules typically equal? Anybody remember what I taught when we first taught this? No, what did I say to look for? Lone pairs. Lone pairs. Didn't I teach that when I originally taught this? Way back? Just look for lone pairs. It's not a guarantee, but it is typically going to make it polar. Okay? Alrighty. And then I have something that I said earlier today. I have written down halogens. Okay, which makes it a halide, right? Halogens, I think this was the second table. Wasn't the second table the halide table? What?
Like where we talk about alpha halides?
Yeah, that's the first table?
Well, it was like the second. You said give us 3. So
Yeah, I think it's the second table.
It's the second table.
Halogens are always what? I said this already today. They're always branches. They will never be part of my main chain. Okay? Now, what if I drew this? Let's say I drew that. What is that? Okay, now,
I caught myself.
you automatically just think that's a benzene. This is not benzene. To be benzene, what has to happen? It has to be 3 alternating double bonds. There, or there. They are the what? Technically.
Same.
They're the same thing. Doesn't matter. Okay? And then I've written this down, and I don't remember what this means. I will have to look it back up. But I know I read something about molecular to skeletal or something. But if they just draw you what's called an empirical formula like this, C3H8O, they are virtually impossible to just draw. You know what I'm saying? Because they don't tell you what. Where they are, or what bonds to what, or whatever. So this is called an empirical formula. Just gives you the lowest whole number ratio of what's there. This is not conducive to anything we're doing other than it tells you what is in that compound. I know that somewhere in my compound I've got 3 C's, I've got 8 H's, and I've got an O, but it doesn't tell me what's bonded to what or how it's bonded or whatever. So just to understand that, it's called an empirical formula. And sometimes the empirical is also the molecular formula. It just depends on what it is. But just to understand that that doesn't do us a lot of good right now because it doesn't fit into how we're drawing bonds and things.
But if it didn't have the O,
Yeah, if it didn't have the O, we'd be fine. You're right. But this doesn't tell me is, this an aldehyde or is this part of my main chain? Or, you know what I mean? So it kind of changes things a little bit. So, okay.
It's an alkane, so.
It is an alkane because there's no double bonds. Well, I don't even know if you could guarantee that.
You'd have to.
you
You-
can't just be, well, yeah,
Because like
you
you'd have to
can,
have
because
2 CH3s, and then you'd have to have 1 H hanging off the carbon and 1 H hanging off.
But do you see it? Do you see how I'm thinking? I could draw this probably 5 legitimate different ways.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's what makes this not very conducive to what we're doing. They're going to give you things that make it pretty simple. Okay, so I don't even remember why I wrote that down. I'll have to look. Okay. So, is there anything here? Let's look at this again. You guys look at it and tell me if there's anything there you do not think we've discussed. Because these are all the topics. These are all the topics that are on the test. So So you look at that and tell me if there's a topic there we did not discuss today, or have not discussed at length in the last, during this chapter.
At least not on that side.
Anything there we haven't discussed? Okay, let's look at the back side. Anything there we haven't discussed? I think this is where that thing we were just talking about was. I will have to look that up again, so I don't remember.
I think we've covered that.
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions? I did not check this morning in my 6th period. I still had 2 students that hadn't done a damn thing. That was frustrating. Very, very. Yeah, you guys are shaking your head like, how can they do that? Now imagine being me. I've been harping on that for like 8 months now, at least 7 for sure. Okay. Alrighty, time is yours. Use it wisely.